Welcome to the Confident Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Anne, mama of two, holistic pregnancy and pediatric sleep consultant, and the founder of Empowered Decisions. In our seasons together, I'm here to help you step into your inner confidence from pregnancy to motherhood. Whether you are preparing to meet your baby or integrating into new mom life, this is a safe space with education and support for your journey. Join me as we raise the vibe of our motherhood collective. Welcome back to the Confident Motherhood Podcast. I'm Anne, a holistic pregnancy and infant and toddler sleep consultant, and your podcast host today. Or I should say tonight, because I am late night on the mic. I put my kids to bed and I had dinner. I started to have dinner and I was like, do I want to watch the reunion of Love is Blind season 8? And I knew that it was going to delay me getting to recording this episode, but I was like, you know what? I need this time for myself. So I went ahead and watched it. And now it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, here we are. We're going to be talking about newborn sleep tonight, which I'm actually really excited about this topic. Now, obviously, every time I do an episode, I'm really excited about the topic. That's the whole point of bringing you these discussions. But when I say I am excited about newborn sleep, this has been a journey for me since day one of becoming a mom and a sleep consultant, because my first journey with my first son when I was a mom, this goes back to 2017, is I really struggled. He and I really struggled with sleep, and there was just a whole bunch of things that you're figuring out, and it was a really challenging journey. And that entire journey is the reason that I am a sleep coach today. And so it's such a big part of my story, and the struggles that I experienced during that time with him and figuring things out and sleep and the million things that I didn't know then that I know now, I have carried that with me throughout the past 7-8 years to be able to then help moms on their journey. And that's my whole purpose here, is if I can share with you information, education, and help you feel more empowered in your newborn experience, that is the shift. Because oftentimes our experience as new moms really kind of starts to pave the way for our motherhood journey. And there's so much more information that we should be sent home with that we just don't get. So that was the idea behind this. Now, it's also, I use the word unique, but it's interesting in a way, me as a sleep coach, to be so passionate and love talking about newborn sleep, because it is not a time 0 to 3, 0 to 4 months typically where you're doing any sort of sleep coaching. There never should be sleep training and sleep coaching in the newborn phase. But over the past years of coaching, I've realized that that also means that there is a painful gap of support between, okay, you're pregnant and you're on this journey, you have your baby, and then okay, if you're just struggling and you don't know what the hell is going on, you're like, okay, well, talk to you in 4 months, talk to you in 6 months, and that gap is not okay. So over the years, I have built resources and education, and I have had countless phone calls and support with pregnant and newborn moms, because the more you know, the easier that journey can be, the easier you can navigate and problem solve with your new baby and pull you out of less of the struggle and more in just feeling like, you know what, I got this. And even if it's hard right now, I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I really struggled with that early on when I was a new mom, and my first newborn experience is I did not feel like there was a light at the end of that tunnel. So that's the context and a little backstory for tonight's episode. And I had, I shared with you a little bit about my first, but my second was drastically different. It was so much easier. And I have gone within many times to kind of dive into why was it easier the second time around. And I always say this, that yes, okay, I had done it before and I did have expectations of what I was walking into, but I truly feel that I had an easier second newborn experience, and my son was an easier baby because I was educated, because I knew how to problem solve, because I had all these years of not only, of course, being a mom, but of being a sleep coach. And those are the things, one, I just think we should know more. We should be sent home with hey, these are the things that you're likely going to experience, things that you can see, because there's so much doubting ourselves and questioning, is this normal? So I can't give you all of it, but I want to start talking about some of these really normal, common things that you can expect to put your mind at ease a little bit more when you're experiencing with your baby and help you to feel more empowered. So I generally will break down the newborn experience and what I call the heavy hitters, the key areas of focus, the things that I want you to be, this is what you should be worrying or not worrying about, into these categories. First and foremost, I know that we're going to be talking about sleep and information, but this is all about healing and bonding. Okay. So let's not forget that there's a lot of pressure and unrealistic structure that kind of gets put on us when we bring home this new baby. Like, oh, you got to get him on the perfect schedule and don't do this or this is going to happen. No, too much stress. This is such a beautiful, unique time. We are open, we are healing. We have this new human that basically happens to just be on the outside, but is very much still on their own journey. And this is the 4th trimester, the first 3 months postpartum. So healing and bonding is a major focus. I will also support women through the feeding journey that comes along, not in the lactation consultant or IBCLC way, but as it directly connects to sleep, because there's so many crucial connections between sleep and development, sleep and nutrition, all of these things. And the last being, there's many on the list, but like the heavy hitters, healing, bonding, feeding, which ties into your nutrition, obviously, and preventing overtiredness, which is often missed. And it is such a big thing with newborns that they can so very easily get into overtiredness, which we're going to talk through. But this is kind of the core of where I'm like, if we're going to simplify things and not make this a terribly frustrating time, we want to heal. We want to bond with our baby. We want to make sure that we are supporting it's you and baby, because you guys are figuring this out together, no matter if you're doing bottle or breast, but you're navigating that feeding journey. And we want to make sure that we are setting them up to have the best sleep they can be. And there's layers to that. Newborn sleep is very complex, but preventing over tiredness, which can be done in a couple ways, can really help to kind of mitigate the risk that you are going to have added sleep struggles with your newborn. So again, I've got you. Don't worry about kind of all these pieces. We're going to dive in, but I just wanted to kind of kick off with like, these are kind of the 4 main categories that I like to focus on. Now, some bonus categories. And I'm going to talk about a resource that you can check out if you're kind of leaving this episode and you're craving more. But I also help families that want to. This is the key word, because sometimes, if I'm keeping it all the way real, we are just trying to find our balance between surviving and thriving in the newborn phase. Like that's just, it is what it is. Sometimes newborn experiences are really easy. Sometimes they're not so easy, but we're trying to find that balance. So for families that crave kind of that idea of like, I want to get ahead of things, I want to create some early good sleep habits, those sorts of things, I have step-by-steps and how-tos of like how we would want to do that, which also can include things like establishing routines and making sure sleep environments are set up. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of come at newborn sleep, but I don't like to take the unrealistic structure and pressure. We get enough of it as pregnant women, as moms, and then continuing on with our motherhood journey. I don't really feel like it ever stops, that I don't think that that is the primary focus that should be of what is the 4th trimester. So let's kind of dive into some of these things newborn sleep related and give you some kind of information and expectations that you can think about and then apply to whether your baby's here now or you're pregnant or you know somebody who's pregnant that you can share with them. So as a blanket statement, I actually almost thought about titling the podcast episode this: newborn sleep is all things but predictable. Now, there's a few reasons for that. One, newborn sleep in and of itself is very unique developmentally, like how actually sleep works in the body and the brain. But your baby is going through rapid growth and development. 0 to 6 months in general is more rapid growth and development. But the first 12 weeks, your baby is essentially changing and growing and developing right in front of your eyes every single day. And this rapid growth is sometimes we think we figured them out, whether it's like a few days at a time or a week, and then they go and change. And that can kind of knock us off of our confidence. It can make us doubt ourselves and what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? So I want there to be a baseline going into newborn sleep that is all things but predictable. And we just kind of need to have that. And even myself, even the second time around, I had to remind myself of that on many different occasions. So kind of tying into this understanding that newborn sleep is unique and how it changes. Now, essentially, as your baby approaches 4 months, that is where things change. So we're talking like newborn sleep and then life beyond newborn sleep. But I have an entire other episode regarding 4 months. And if you've ever heard about the quote unquote 4-month sleep regression, so I have support for that. But specifically just talking about newborn sleep, I always say this is for better or worse, meaning if you're going to be having a so easy newborn experience or a not so easy newborn experience, newborn sleep is generally not indicative of what sleep is or could look like beyond the newborn phase. Sleep is a puzzle. I want you to think about it in that way. And there's lots of different pieces to that puzzle. So whether your sleep is easy or not so easy in the newborn phase, and again, we're always trying to find that balance between surviving and thriving it, we can work on sleep beyond the newborn phase. We can have different expectations. We can make different decisions to kind of bring those pieces to the puzzle together to help your baby have a nice, solid sleep foundation. And having a solid sleep foundation as they get older, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is not indicative of what happened in the newborn phase. And I'll obviously speak with parents a lot and hear stories. And it is such a common theme of like, you know what, sleep, let's say they had an easier newborn experience. You know, sleep was good for a period of time and then things changed. And I don't ever like that story or that tagline to come along with the dun dun dun, like, oh gosh, well, you know what, I'm in the newborn time right now, it's pretty easy, like, oh God, what's to come? No, for better or worse, it's not always indicative, but beyond the newborn phase is always a really great time just to assess, how are things going? Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? So just know that there doesn't need to be any, oh, you just wait. I hate that sort of like mom and parent advice. It's generally just not helpful. It doesn't make us feel good at all. But again, all things but predictable. Newborn sleep is unique. And an example of this is newborns spend a lot of time in active sleep. Their sleep cycles are different than what they will be as they get closer to 4 months and beyond. And what this can mean, like in your real life with your baby, is your baby looking like they are waking up, actually waking up when actually they are sleeping, which is a pretty crazy, I guess I'll use the word phenomenon to experience. The first time around, I just thought that my son never slept, and he pretty much never slept. But the second time around, it was so much easier for me to identify and be like, oh, he's actually still sleeping. Like, I don't need to engage in this exact moment. And so many times they will resettle. But if you don't know that, if you don't know that newborns spend time in active sleep and understand those sleep cycles, then you could be like, oh my gosh, they're waking up again and again. Newborn sleep is unpredictable and they do wake up very frequently. There's a pretty solid expectation that it's okay that newborns wake every few hours at 9. They're looking for nutrition. And we would love for those longer stretches to be happening at nighttime. And oftentimes they do. But if you have a night with longer stretches and then you have a night with shorter stretches, usually as parents, we're like, what did we do differently tonight? What did we do differently today? And again, understanding all of these pieces to your newborn sleep puzzle is going to help kind of reassure you on what is happening and kind of put it into the buckets of like, oh, yep, no, I can expect this. This is normal. It doesn't have to be something that you did right or wrong. Now, going back to one of the pillars of where I like to put focus for newborn sleep is understanding awake windows. Now, I work with families with older babies and even toddlers. And up until about a year and a half, I focus with families on awake window schedules, which is essentially a natural awake window. There's ranges, a minimum and a maximum amount of time that little ones should be awake for their age. And some babies perfectly fit into those awake windows and some don't. And that's a big part of when I work one-on-one with families is helping to identify where babies are. But the awake window that I wanted to share with you in kind of this focus of newborn time is 0 to 3 months. But in the first month, newborns typically are going to have about a 30 to 45 minute awake window. In some cases, maybe a max of an hour. And understanding what awake windows are is really helpful. So let's talk through that. An awake window is simply the time that your baby is awake in between their sleeps. Now, awake windows can be and feel challenging for newborns because things get blurry. And what I mean by blurry is newborns are sleepy, very, very sleepy, especially in the first couple weeks. It's not uncommon to bring your newborn baby home from the hospital, and for the first couple weeks, they're just sleeping. You're like, this is amazing. I'm like the best parent ever. I have the easiest baby. Before things start changing and evolving, you're like, oh, wait, what happened? Newborns are very sleepy. So essentially, when they're having quote unquote awake time, it's not always purely awake, right? There can be kind of dozing in and out, whatnot. But when we're aiming for and trying to prevent overtiredness, having at least this in the back of your mind of like, okay, they're awake for about 30 to 45 minutes, which PS goes by in a blink, right? By the time they're up and you feed them, some newborns can spend almost their entire, if not their entire awake window eating, especially if you're in a nursing journey, because that is a whole evolution and experience that you're going through and finding your way with your little teammate who is your baby. But even on the bottle, like they're slow and sleepy eaters. And even, I always kind of look at both sides of, I was a nursing mom and my first experience was really challenging. My second was easier. But even babies who are on bottle, whether that is through pumped breast milk or that is on a formula is also a journey of finding what works for your baby, what doesn't, how are they responding, how's their digestion, all of these different things. So nonetheless, feeding can take up a very large part of their awake windows. So by the time they're up, they're fed, maybe get some tummy time in, some engagement, it's like, boom, they're ready for the next sleep. And newborns are essentially in their total day sleeping more than they are awake. But again, I just want you to have that in that first month, about 30 to 45 minutes. And in some cases with some newborns, they can, quote unquote, can stay awake longer, but we don't necessarily want them to. We want to keep like nice, kind of like, I use the word like tight, like nice, tight awake windows are really consistent. We're kind of like, in this case, if we're in the first month, about every 30 to 45, you're like aiming for the next sleep, which usually isn't terribly difficult at this stage of newborns, because oftentimes we are helping them with that sleep, but it can be really blurry for that reason. Now, a question that I get asked often when I'm doing newborn support calls is like, is it okay to let them sleep? Should I be waking my sleeping newborn baby? And there also is that, kind of old saying of like, never wake a sleeping baby. Well, sometimes we might need to. So another fun fact is when we give birth, when our baby is here, your baby will lose a percentage of their birth weight after birth, which is natural and it's normal. And you're going to be having your, pediatrician, your wellness checks, if you will, and they're going to be checking baby's weight. So essentially within the first couple of weeks, they're going to want that your baby gets back to birth weight. And sometimes that can mean that your baby even surpasses it. And if your baby doesn't get back to birth weight, then they're also going to have a plan of what that's looking like and talk with you about your journey and make sure that baby is gaining and thriving and all of those things. So from a sleep perspective, once baby is back to birth weight, generally we don't have to wake them at nighttime, meaning if they want to sleep longer, than those few hour stretches, they can. Generally with newborns, when they do go sleep, longer stretches than that, they're generally going to wake up and try to kind of make up for that missed out nutrition during that like longer stretch of sleep. But during the daytime, we don't want newborns oversleeping. And this can happen because circadian rhythm, that connection with the sun, that, really in the body, developmental, that understanding of day versus night doesn't happen until closer to 4 months. So really what that means is like your baby doesn't really have an understanding of day versus night, but it doesn't mean that we can't do things that is supporting day versus night, meaning nighttime it's quiet and we have routines and obviously the house is dark and all of these different things. And we are also going to sleep, but there's still an expectation that they're going to be waking up and looking for nutrition, looking for help. In the daytime, which I have other resources where I say like, you don't need to bring a circus in the daytime and force your baby to be sleeping in light and all these things to teach them that it's daytime. That's not really how it works developmentally. It's something that's going to happen, but we can make sure in general, I always say like 2 hours is a nice good cap on a nap, like any nap at a max. Is there total times where you may let your baby sleep longer than 2 hours? Yep, been there, totally done it. It's not going to create any harm. But if you're seeing your newborn like mega nap, like essentially kind of treat daytime like nighttime, we don't want to do that. We essentially want to kind of cap them. We also want them feeding every like 2-3 hours. Like we want them to be on their gaining and their nutrition journey. So generally capping naps about a max of 2 hours, making sure they're getting fed, offering full feeds every few hours. And then if they've gotten back to birth weight in that first couple weeks, then you can support them getting the longer stretches at nighttime. And both of those factors can kind of help sleep essentially develop naturally. And it doesn't always mean that there isn't going to be sleep frustrations or struggles, but we can kind of keep that core understanding of things that you can be doing day versus night that can be supportive to them. Now, another big one that I don't know, it's probably heard around the globe in some cases, but there's a lot of early mom pressuring, guilting, shaming when it comes to associations. And I think especially in Western culture, there's a lot of like, we shouldn't be spoiling our babies and you're going to be creating bad habits or, what we would call like a quote unquote sleep association, which comes in down the line. But I also want to reassure you, and going back to again, the pillars, newborns need co-regulation for sleep. Okay. And that means essentially that they need help. Reminder, this is the fourth trimester. They're just on the outside instead of being on the inside. So they are looking to us, and it doesn't mean like they're like, "Hey, mom, bounce me. Hey, mom, I need the pacifier." It's that closeness with us is helping them to regulate. So it's not uncommon, I experience this myself, but I hear it, dozens and dozens and dozens of times is, I want my newborn to sleep in their bassinet or their crib. And if I put them down, they'll sleep 30 minutes. But if I hold them, like they'll sleep 2 hours. Yeah, that's co-regulation. And it doesn't mean that we don't want or need a safe and healthy sleep space for your baby. That is, we want that in our lineup of things that we're pulling together. We need a designated place for your baby to be sleeping. I also want to kind of normalize that it's normal for babies to sleep, like nap on us, right? We're talking contact naps, or they're being worn in their, wrap or baby carrier. Motion is really soothing to them. Pacifiers, if you're going to be using pacifier, I always say the newborn time is the time to be using it because it's the best time to help pacify them. Falling asleep on breast or bottle, these are all really normal things. But if we kind of take in that advice and information of like, oh no, I'm creating bad habits. Like, oh no, what is this going to look like for me long term, or feeling like this isn't sustainable. And in some cases we love it. I mean, the second time around, I like relished and loved that time with him because I knew I would get to a place where I'm like, hey, I'm going to be ready to get him into his crib and for him to learn to nap independently. But I had better expectations. The first time around, I was like, what? Like, if my boob was not in his mouth, he was not sleeping, which is cool and all until that is day in and day out for weeks and months. And you're like, okay, well, what does this look like? Right. So just know that newborns need co-regulation for sleep, and it's okay that that is happening. And when, we kind of talk about awake windows and those sorts of things and them eating, sometimes almost in their entire awake window, this is another reason why I don't put the structure on newborn moms to like feeding upon waking. I actually just did an entire episode about why the advice is to do feeding upon waking, which is something I do with families beyond the newborn phase, like once we're coaching. But I don't specifically give this advice to newborn parents because when the goal is that you're offering full feeds and they're being offered that every few hours. So sometimes that means that the feed is coming before the nap, and sometimes that means after. And that's where I feel like the priority should be versus it being timed and structured. Now, I've also worked with many families who have done structured schedules out the gate and love it. And they're like, oh, this was amazing for me. And it gave them the structure. And there is a lot of support around babies having a lot of consistency and structure. Babies, really, even toddlers, thrive with routine and consistency. But again, I'm always going to come back to that is all fine and well if that works for you and your baby. But sometimes we have these expectations, even before our baby arrives, of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to follow. That may or may not work for your baby in that season. So I think sometimes like we just don't really know until they're here and we're kind of implementing things to see what's working and what's not working. But if I'm prioritizing the list of you must be doing feeding upon waking, I don't feel that it's absolutely necessary to put that sort of pressure in the newborn phase. Beyond the newborn phase, when we're helping babies learn to sleep independently and again, bringing all those pieces to their puzzle together, that can be really helpful, but not always a big thing in the newborn phase. I would rather focus on the healing and the bonding and making sure that we are helping baby learn to feed efficiently, navigating a breast or bottle journey to kind of alleviate one of those extra pressures that may or may not need to be there. Now, this episode was also inspired by the fact that I've said this line many, many times over the years of like, some of these things, awake windows or co-regulation, newborn sleep cycles, when to wake them, all these different things on like, oftentimes we're just not sent home with like, hey, this is how sleep works, right? Like, here's kind of what's going on. Here's some expectations, maybe easy, maybe not so easy, but beyond the newborn phase, just know that there's options for you. And this is going to be a common theme through a lot of my sleep related podcast episodes on sleep is never one size fits all. Sleep coaching is never one size fits all. You have options. Not all sleep coaching means you have to let your baby cry it out. And, that approach has been around for a really long time. So it kind of gives the general population, this idea that sleep training just means that. But no matter what struggles you're having, like just understanding pediatric sleep is really helpful so that you can then make decisions for you and your baby. And if you do explore sleep coaching, I'm a holistic sleep coach, just know that you have options out there. So no matter what it looks like for you, I just never want moms and families like, oh, you're a parent now, so that just means you're meant to struggle forever with sleep. No, maybe we struggle in the newborn phase, maybe. Newborn time, newborn sleep, the adjustment, all the things that we're kind of going through and, navigating becoming a parent for the first time, a mom for the first time, sometimes can knock our confidence, but just know that you have options. Since I love newborn sleep so much, and I'd mentioned I felt there was a gap in support, I created a newborn sleep education guide. It's called the Empowered Newborn Sleep e-guide. And it's packed with information. And it took me a really long time to create it because I just kept adding and adding and adding to it. But really, it's newborn education. It is information. It is tips. It is how-tos. It is understanding all these crucial connections when it comes to their schedule, to their nutrition, to their sleep environment, to some of the struggles you may experience, to kind of all of these different pieces. But I wanted to create it from a place of, hey, here's all the info. Here's how this works so that you can apply it to your baby. Because that's the problem, is like, it's not one size fits all. We oftentimes don't even know what we're experiencing until we're in it. And an example of that is I didn't know what tongue tie was before I had my first son. I was having a ton of issues with him latching and, I'm working with this lactation consultant, I'm going to this appointment, all these things, to then learn that he was tongue tied. And then that was an entire other journey that I wasn't expecting. And I didn't even know about it to know that that could be a part of my journey. There's babies that experience reflux and GERD and, all of these different things. So I think that it's important when you have information to then be able to apply it without being like, oh, this either aligns with me or doesn't align with me, or this structure works for me or it doesn't work for me. I think there's just a lot of missing, like we're just not told and we're not given that pediatric sleep information so that we can really make empowered decisions, pun intended, obviously. But really, it's just so important to note that there's no one size fits all. And we just don't know what that journey is going to be like until our new baby is here and we're living it. And even then, like so much can change in the first 3 months. So you deserve to feel empowered and informed, because having good expectations, oh my gosh, it can really make the difference. Because again, it's a death and a rebirth. Like you are a new version of yourself now, but it's nothing like newborn time to be like doubting ourselves, and be like questioning everything. So I always want to make sure that we can move away from the very old idea of like, I just hope my baby's a good sleeper. And look, I was in that headspace when I had my first son, like when I was pregnant with him, like, God, I just hope that he's a good sleeper. It just doesn't work like that. So let's just educate ourselves so that you can feel better about the experience. And then it will be much easier to be making self-aligned decisions for what works for you and your baby when we can like move out of something that's not even really helpful in the first place. And if you end up with an easy sleeper, yay, we love that for you. But I don't like to prepare families for like, oh, your newborn experience is going to be challenging. We just don't know until they're here. But oftentimes it is a very exciting, incredible, yet exhausting time. And just like I will share with women that I'm supporting in pregnancy, you want a solid team or group. And a team and group kind of sounds like big words. You have to have like a bunch of people. Not necessarily. Your team may be 1 or 2 people or 3 to 5 people / resources / expert. I'm a very much like let the experts do what they do. But that saying of like it takes a village when we are navigating like early motherhood, like new mom life, having people who you know and you trust when you have questions, when you need support, when you need answers, when you're like starting to experience new parts of your journey that you didn't know were there before. This is what's going to help you to stay confident, because like I said, there's nothing like new mom life to really make us question these sorts of things. But I want you to continue to make self-aligned decisions for you and your baby. It is a major shift in your energy, and you can do that early on. Many of us, have been moms for some time, probably didn't feel that way the first time around where you're really feeling empowered in your decisions. But I think that, having new information and resources and, podcast episodes, these sorts of things, like I say in my intro, like let's raise the vibe for our motherhood collective, because you deserve it. Like moms don't deserve to be having these horrible, challenging newborn experiences. And if you're in one of those, like again, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to have the resources, or we need to seek the resources and support to get that to really elevate your journey. I hope this episode was helpful, and I have so much more information about newborn sleep, and in that guide, as a thank you for tuning in and listening, I created a 50% off discount code for you, which is POD, P-O-D, sleep, S-L-E-E-P, 50, POD sleep 50, for 50% off that newborn sleep e-guide, which you can grab on my website in the digital shop. So definitely check that out because it has got all the newborn sleep goodies in there. But until the next episode, lots of love. Whether you're a tired mom struggling with your little one's sleep or an expecting mom looking for empowerment and advocacy as you prepare for birth, I'm here to show up for you with proven strategies and education to elevate your journey. You deserve to feel heard and given the tools to have success. Mama, you do not have to navigate your pregnancy or sleep struggles alone. Head over to empoweredwithann.com to discover how we can support you. Confidence, empowerment, and peace are just a click away.